I can still feel the morning dew clinging to my boots as I stepped out of the old red barn, squinting against the pale sunlight that hovered above the rolling fields. My name is Lauren Callahan, and for as long as I could remember, this land belonged to my family, stretching across acres of fertile soil that my grandfather had tilled by hand, and later by machine. My husband Jacob had devoted his life to these fields, waking before dawn every single day to coax life out of the earth, to feed people, and to sustain our small community in rural Iowa. But none of that mattered to my sister Monica. She always had her nose turned up, preferring polished city streets and high-rise cafes to the smell of hay and the taste of sweat. When she heard I married a farmer, she laughed so hard I thought she might choke, then sneered. "A farmhand? You're going to end up right where you started, in the dirt." Her words had stung, but I brushed them off. After all, I knew Jacob's value. His quiet strength, his unwavering dedication were the bedrock of our future. Besides, I loved him, and I believed in this land. That morning felt like any other, but as I made my way down the gravel lane toward the farmhouse, I noticed a black SUV parked beside the creek, its engine idling. Two men in dark suits stood at the edge of the property, their eyes scanning the fields with a mixture of appraisal and calculation. My heart skipped a beat. "Jacob, who's out there?" I called, my voice carrying on the breeze. He emerged from the house, wiping his hands on a rag, his brow furrowed. "That's strange," he muttered, stepping closer to me. "I didn't expect anyone this early." His gaze hardened as he studied the strangers. One of the men pushed his sunglasses up his nose. "Mrs. Callahan? Mr. Callahan, I'm Samuel Hawthorne, and this is my partner, Elise Grant. We're with Hawthorne and Grant Appraisals. We'd like to discuss the recent survey of your property." Appraisals, my pulse thundered. Surveys usually meant big changes. Corporate interests sniffing around, developers eyeing new subdivisions, or wind farm companies looking to plant turbines in the endless fields. I exchanged a look with Jacob, whose jaw clenched. "We haven't requested an appraisal," he said, his tone polite but firm. Mr. Hawthorne nodded, flipping through a sheaf of papers. "It's not always the owners who call us in. There's been significant activity in land acquisitions this region. We were commissioned by unnamed investors to determine the current market value." He paused, letting the implication hang in the air. I could feel the color draining from my cheeks. "Investors? Who are they?" I demanded. Elise stepped forward. "I'm afraid we're under strict confidentiality. All I can say is they see potential here." She smiled, but it was cold, empty. Potential. I pressed my palm to Jacob's arm to stop him from answering. We knew better than to antagonize corporate vultures. Instead, we offered them coffee and sat them on the porch, while Jacob fetched mugs from the kitchen. "Tell me what you need," Jacob said, setting down the mugs with a gentle clink. "Measurements? Soil tests? Crop yields?" "Exact figures on production, equipment, water sources, anything that contributes to your bottom line," Samuel replied. As Jacob began detailing each crop cycle, I watched Monica's mocking words flash in my mind. "Worth millions? Give me a break." She'd said that the day I brought Jacob home. She'd said he was wasting his talent, that he could do something bigger, something better if only he'd leave this place behind. Back then, I'd bristled. Now, as I watched our modest farmhouse and endless rows of corn and soy stand in the morning haze, I wondered if she'd been right to laugh. The appraisal team left 2 hours later, taking soil samples and scribbling notes, their cars disappearing down the winding country road as suddenly as they had appeared. I bolted the door behind them and leaned against it, the weight of uncertainty settling in my chest. Jacob found me in the kitchen, twisting the key in his hand. "Lauren, thank God. Are you okay?" I nodded, though the lump in my throat made words impossible. "They're gauging our worth, Jacob." I touched his arm, feeling the warmth in his skin. "They think this land's worth more than we realized." He took my hand, his calloused fingers wrapping around mine. "Whatever happens, we face it together." I looked up at him, into those earnest eyes that had made me fall in love. "Together," I echoed, resolve building like a spark igniting tinder. Little did I know that appraisal was only the beginning. Behind those polite questions and confidential investors lay a plan that would turn our quiet life on its head and make our humble farm a prize more valuable than any of us could imagine. When daytime blurred into dusk, we walked the field's boundary, Jacob pointing out where the creek curved, and I traced the worn fence posts that marked our heritage. I inhaled the scent of earth and growing things, letting it anchor me. At the horizon, the sun dipped below the corn, painting the sky in streaks of amber and rose. I closed my eyes and let the moment sink in, the promise, the fear, and the thrill of the unknown. As the last light faded, I whispered to myself, "This is our story, and I will fight for it with everything I have." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. The dawn crept quietly over the Callahan farm, casting long shadows between the rows of corn as I stepped onto the porch with a cup of steaming coffee in hand. The air was crisp, and every breath felt like a promise. Yesterday's appraisal visit loomed in my thoughts, but I refused to let fear anchor me. The farm was my home, my legacy, and I would protect it. Jacob was already in the fields, the silhouette of his tractor humming against the horizon. I watched as he guided the machine, his posture unwavering, a man in perfect harmony with the land. My heart swelled with pride. He didn't just plow soil, he nurtured life. I set my coffee on the railing and went inside to review the notebooks I kept in the kitchen. Recipes, financial ledgers, planting schedules, every detail of our existence was documented here, the lifeblood of our small operation. I flipped through the pages, pausing at a chart of yield estimates. "We're on track for a record harvest," I murmured, tracing the upward curve with my finger. "We can show them real numbers, Jacob." I found him during his mid-morning break under the old oak tree. His straw hat shaded his face, but when he looked up, his eyes met mine with a question. "I've been thinking," I said, handing him my notebook. "We need to take control of this narrative. If these investors value our land now, imagine how they'll react when they see the real potential. Organic certification, agritourism, renewable energy initiatives." He raised an eyebrow, wiping sweat from his brow. "You're dreaming big." I laughed softly. "Since when is dreaming a bad thing? We've lived small for too long. Maybe it's time we expand our vision." Jacob studied my face, searching for the impatience that sometimes flickered there. He found it, yes, but also something fiercer, determination. "All right," he said after a moment's pause. "What's your plan?" I slid the notebook into his calloused hands. "First, we map out the land more thoroughly. I want a complete GIS survey, topography, soil composition, water tables. Then, we pitch a partnership to the local community college for an agricultural research program. They get data, we get innovation, we document every step." His lips curved into a slow smile. "You really want to do this?" "I have to," I met his gaze. "You've built something amazing here, Jacob. I can't sit back and watch someone else reap the rewards." He squeezed my hand. "Let's do it." I felt a surge of exhilaration as we shook on our new venture. It was the first time in weeks that fear felt replaced by hope. The next week was a whirlwind. We contacted the county extension office, arranged meetings with agronomists, and toured potential research collaborators. By Tuesday, we had secured tentative support from Midwestern State University's Department of Sustainable Agriculture. They were excited about testing cover crops on our fields to improve soil health. Every time I hung up the phone, I felt the weight of possibility settle in my chest. But as progress gained momentum, whispers began rippling through the county. Over coffee at Miller's Diner, neighbors speculated about the appraisal. "Heard the Hawthorns are eyeing the Callahan place," one old farmer said. "Going to be a big estate soon." I sipped my coffee slowly, nodding politely, even though the comment stung. Rumors spread like wildfire in small towns, and I knew that public perception mattered. I needed to shape the story before others wrote it for me. That evening, I drafted a press release. Local farm partners with State University for Sustainable Agriculture Research Pilot. I sent it to the local newspaper and posted a carefully worded summary on social media. In the farm's monthly newsletter, I detailed the benefits of the research and invited the community to join a farm open day. Jacob raised an eyebrow at the computer screen. "You're networking faster than a politician." I shrugged, smiling. Maybe I should run for office next. He laughed, then sobered. Just promise me you're not losing sleep over all this. Only exciting dreams keep me up. I rested my head against his shoulder, feeling the rough fabric of his shirt beneath my cheek. The open day arrived on a sunny Saturday. Families wandered through demonstration plots, university students explained their experiments, and school children squealed as they fed baby lambs in the barnyard. The county paper photographer snapped pictures, and I could already imagine the headline, Callahan Farm, Innovation Rooted in Tradition. At the end of the day, I found Monica leaning against the fence, arms crossed. Her designer handbag swung from her shoulder, incongruous in the dirt. She glanced up as I approached, her expression unreadable. Well, I said, extending my hand. Welcome back to the farm. She took my hand briefly, her nails clicking against my palm. I see you've been busy. Always. I nodded toward the bustle behind her. Look around. This is our future. She studied the scene, the laughter of neighbors, the bright banners, the Cleary extension sign fluttering. I have to admit, she said quietly, I never thought this place had it in it. My heart pounded. This was the moment between skepticism and revelation. Before I could respond, Jacob appeared beside me, his broad shoulders filling my view. He offered Monica a handshake, which she accepted awkwardly. I don't think you'll be mocking us much longer, he said gently. Monica glanced at him, then at me. Maybe I was wrong. I held my breath, waiting for the rest of her words. But before she could speak again, the distant rumble of trucks echoed from the road. Heads turned as a convoy of black SUVs rolled into view, the same foreboding vehicles that had first brought Samuel and Elise. My blood ran cold. It looks like they're back, I whispered. Jacob took my hand, his grip firm. We're ready this time. I nodded, determination lighting every fiber of my being. Let them come. And with that, we faced the convoy as the sun dipped low, ready to defend everything we'd built, together. The convoy rolled into the gravel drive, kicking up clouds of dust that shimmered in the late afternoon light. I stood beside Jacob at the edge of the field, our hands still clasped tightly together. The sleek black SUVs ground to a halt by the barn, their tinted windows reflecting our farm's modest glory. I inhaled slowly, steadying my nerves. This was it, their second visit. If the first appraisal was a test, this was the real examination. The driver's door of the lead SUV opened with a muted thud, and Samuel Hawthorne emerged, followed by Elise Grant, each carrying folders bulging with documents. They wore expressions of business-like neutrality, though I could see the curiosity dancing behind their eyes. Mrs. Callahan, Elise called, her voice crisp as autumn wind. Thank you for meeting us again. I nodded politely. Of course. Please follow me to the farmhouse porch. Jacob lingered a moment, his gaze meeting mine. I sensed the questions unspoken in his eyes. Do we trust them? Can we outmaneuver them? I squeezed his hand before turning to lead the way. Inside, I offered them iced tea and water. The cold condensation dripped onto the tray as they settled in the wicker chairs, their suits contrasting with the worn wood of the floorboards. I poured glasses for each and set one in front of Jacob, giving him a nod to join the meeting. Let's get straight to business, Samuel began, flipping open his folder. Our clients are interested in acquiring your property. They've reviewed the initial appraisal data and soil reports, and they see immense value. They are prepared to make an offer. My stomach flipped. I sat down across from them, the edge of my chair digging into my thighs. An offer? I repeated. I'm not sure we're ready to sell. Elise placed a paper on the coffee table and slid it toward me. Here are the terms. We've priced it based on current market value plus improvements, factoring in potential agritourism and research collaborations. I studied the sheet. The numbers were staggering. Millions of dollars. Figures I'd never dreamed this land could command. My breath caught. Jacob leaned forward. We appreciate the offer, but this farm is our livelihood, our heritage. Money can't compensate for that. Samuel nodded empathetically. We understand that emotional attachment holds weight. However, our clients are committed to preserving the integrity of the land. They plan to invest in sustainable initiatives, expand the research partnership, and maintain its operational purpose. Investors who talk about sustainability and community. It almost sounded appealing. Almost. I turned to Jacob, searching his face. His jaw was tight, eyes resolute. I realized that beneath the scholarly talk, they were offering us freedom. Freedom from financial uncertainty, from weather risks, from debt. But at what cost? If we sold, would I betray my family's legacy? Would our story end here? Can you give us some time? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Of course, Elise said. We can extend our presence for further discussions, tours, and meetings with community stakeholders. Our clients value your input on how to steward the land. That was the catch. Control slipped away as the check grew larger. We'd have to weigh our dreams against security. Later that night, Jacob and I sat on the porch, the offer resting between us like a silent dispute. Fireflies danced above the corn, and the distant hoot of an owl underscored the stillness. I never thought we'd face this, he murmured, tracing circles on the glass coffee table. Neither did I admitted, but maybe it's an opportunity. We could use that capital to expand the research program, invest in solar, even open a farm-stay bed and breakfast. We could protect the land and secure our future. He looked at me, pride and worry mingling in his eyes. What do you really want? My throat tightened. I want to honor my grandfather's work, but I also want to build something new, something bigger than I ever imagined. I want this story to be ours, not someone else's. His hand found mine in the dark. Then let's write it together. Over the next days, we held workshops in the barn for local farmers, inviting them to voice their concerns and ideas. We walked county commissioners through the fields, showing them our plans for a research center. We even hosted a small investor wine and cheese evening, where I gave a presentation on the farm's history and future prospects. Through it all, the hawthorns shadowed our every move, observing and taking notes. I caught Elise examining photos of our grandparents' wedding, and I wondered if they saw more than farmland, if they saw stories waiting to be monetized. One afternoon, I found Samuel alone in the greenhouse, inspecting tomato vines grown from heirloom seeds. I approached him cautiously. I want to understand your priorities, I began. What matters most to your clients? Yield? Sustainability? Community goodwill? He smiled, turning to face me. Ideally, all three. But they prioritize long-term sustainability. They believe that a healthy ecosystem yields more profit over time. They're looking for a legacy investment. That word stung, legacy. I realized they wanted our narrative as much as our soil, a story of rural innovation, community bonding, and green returns. Then help us craft that narrative, I challenged. If you truly care about legacy, invest in the community, not just the bottom line. Set aside funds for scholarships, local infrastructure, whatever it takes to ensure the county thrives. He paused, considering. That's a bold ask. I met his gaze. This isn't just about acreage. It's about people. If you want my land, you'll have to win my heart first. He closed his notebook. I think my clients can do that. The week before the deadline loomed like a thundercloud. I spent days drafting a memorandum of understanding, listing community commitments, environmental safeguards, and research endowments that would have to be included for me to sign any contract. Jacob reviewed every clause, adding his own concerns about water rights and farmland protections. Finally, I emailed our counterproposal to Samuel. My heart pounded as I hit send. That evening, Jacob and I sat by the creek, listening to water gurgle over stones. The land seemed to breathe with us. I took his hand. No matter what happens, I said, I'm proud of how far we've come. He kissed the back of my hand. Me too. And I know whatever choice you make, it's the right one. Just then, my phone buzzed. A message from Samuel. Can we meet at sunrise? We have their final decision. I stared at the screen, dawn looming. My pulse raced as I realized this was the moment of truth. The fate of our family farm, our legacy, and the future we dreamed of hung in the balance. And so, as the first light of morning painted the sky, I prepared to face the outcome that would change our lives forever. The first light of morning dawned bright and full of possibility as I walked toward the barn, my heart pounding with both excitement and apprehension. Today was closing day. In just a few hours, our land would officially transfer to H&G Investments under the historic agreement we'd painstakingly negotiated. Jacob met me halfway, his worn work boots crunching the gravel path. He pulled me into a tight embrace, breathing in the scent of fresh hay and dew. "Hard to believe we're here," he murmured. I rested my head against his shoulder, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "We made it," I whispered. "We did it." Inside the barn, representatives from H&G Investments gathered around a long trestle table. The air buzzed with quiet chatter as Samuel and Elise prepared the documents. My palms felt clammy as I smoothed out my dress, an elegant yet simple choice, honoring both the gravity of the day and the humble roots of our farm. When everything was in place, Elise rose, her expression sincere. "Today marks not just a sale, but a new chapter for the Callahan family farm and the community that cherishes it. We're honored to present this final paperwork." Samuel joined her at the head of the table. "Mrs. Callahan, Mr. Callahan, please sign here, here, and here." I took the pen, its weight unfamiliar in my hand. With a deep breath, I signed my name, Lauren Callahan, onto the line. The click of the pen echoed in the barn's rafters. Jacob followed, his signature bold and deliberate. Elise beamed. "Congratulations, now the farm and your legacy live on through our partnership." Relief and pride swelled in my chest. I shook hands all around, exchanging warm words with the investors and community members present. As the final pages were deposited into the folder, I realized my dream had come true. The farm would thrive, enriched by innovation and anchored in heritage. Outside, the sun climbed higher, illuminating the rows of corn like a golden sea. I turned to Jacob, who wrapped me in a triumphant hug. "We did it," he repeated. Tears pricked my eyes as I gazed over our land, ours not in the legal sense but in spirit. Our vision would guide its future, and our love had forged this outcome. In the distance, the tractor engine roared to life, and our neighbors resumed their work with renewed hope. This farm had become more than a piece of land. It was a symbol of resilience, community, and dreams realized. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story. As dawn broke over the Callahan estate, I stood at the edge of the eastern meadow, watching the fog lift like a curtain, revealing the stage of our next chapter. The tall grass swayed in soft waves, and the scent of wildflowers lingered on the breeze. Today marked a pivotal moment, and although the county clerk's session was behind us, another challenge awaited. I pressed the brass key into my palm, its ridges worn smooth by generations of Callahans who had unlocked the barn doors to begin their day's work. The sun's rays pierced the barn's windows, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the air, a reminder that even in stillness, life moved around us. Inside, I found Jacob by the old hayloft ladder, sketching out plans on a roll of parchment. His hand traced lines that would transform the granary into guest quarters, a vision of reclaimed timber beams, soft linens, and fireplaces that crackled in autumn's chill. His eyes lit up when he saw me. "Ready for our next adventure?" he asked, rolling up his drawings. I smiled, wrapping my arms around him. "Always." By midday, the contractors had arrived to survey the guest house project. Mike's crew bustled about, measuring walls, checking foundations, and marking where plumbing and wiring would be discreetly installed. I guided them through each detail, ensuring that rustic charm would blend seamlessly with modern comforts. As they worked, I slipped away to the fields, my boots crunching on gravel. The research plots gleamed, rows of cover crops, rotational grazing sections, and an experimental herb garden. Dr. Patel's team was on site, collecting samples and noting improvements. We reviewed the latest reports. Soil pH balances had evened out. Organic matter had increased by 8%, and water runoff had decreased significantly. The results filled me with pride and hope. We were proving that sustainable farming wasn't just a trend, it was our future. That afternoon, I hosted a small group of potential agritourism partners in the barn. Investors and community leaders mingled among hay bales and lanterns, sampling homemade preserves and listening as Jacob demonstrated sheep shearing. The barn's rafters echoed with laughter and conversation. "Imagine," I told them, A weekend retreat where guests learn to milk goats at sunrise, dine on farm-fresh meals at sunset, and sleep under a starlit sky. They leave rejuvenated, enlightened, and connected to the land. Their enthusiastic nods and applause confirmed that the dream resonated beyond our little corner of Iowa. Late that evening, as shadows stretched across the fields, I penned a heartfelt letter to the local school, inviting students to tour the farm and participate in hands-on workshops. Education had always been the soul of our mission, and this extension felt like honoring that legacy. I sealed the envelope, my mind drifting to the families who would walk these paths, learn the rhythms of sowing and reaping, and perhaps carry these lessons to their own futures. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe! Now, back to the story. The night air was cool as I walked home. Above, a tapestry of stars guided me along the winding lane. I paused at the farmhouse door, listening to the hum of the earth settling for the night. Inside, Jacob awaited with mugs of hot cider. He handed me one, and we sat by the hearth, the firelight dancing in his eyes. "We're building something incredible," he said softly. I nodded, sipping the cider. "And we're doing it together." Tomorrow, the first guests would arrive, and our vision would come to life. But in the quiet between heartbeats, I knew the real magic lay not in the stones or timber, but in the shared dreams that bound our community and the legacy we wrote with every sunrise. My heart pounded as Jacob and I approached the old stone church that served as the county clerk's office. The mid-morning sun slanted through the stained glass windows, casting a kaleidoscope of colors across the wooden pews, where rows of local residents and faces both familiar and new had gathered. This was it, the public comment session before our agreement with H&G Investments could be finalized. I clutched the folded memorandum of understanding in my hand, a blueprint of promises, safeguards, and commitments that would ensure the Callahan Farms legacy. My fingers traced the signatures of county officials at the bottom, a tangible affirmation of community support. Jacob squeezed my arm gently. "You're going to be amazing," he whispered. I offered him a tight smile. My palms were damp, but inside I felt a core of steel. After all we'd fought for, capturing the dreams of an entire community in legal language, this final step required more than numbers and clauses. It required trust. When the county clerk called our names, I rose and made my way to the lectern, Jacob at my side. The room fell silent. The hum of conversation faded into expectant quiet. I cleared my throat. "Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Lauren Callahan, and this is my husband, Jacob. We stand before you not as mere landowners, but as stewards of a legacy that belongs to all of us here in Cedar County." I paused, scanning the crowd. Friends the Hawthorns had impressed with corporate courtesy sat alongside longtime neighbors who'd watched me grow up in these fields. It occurred to me that this moment wasn't about convincing strangers. It was about honoring our shared past and building a future together. "Our family farm has fed generations," I continued, "but it's also been a place of gathering, learning, and community. When H&G Investments approached us, Jacob and I saw an opportunity, not to walk away, but to amplify our mission." I laid out the key points of our agreement. The $500,000 scholarship endowment for sustainable agriculture, the annual $200,000 community infrastructure fund, the legally binding water rights protections, the promise to maintain open access for local markets. "As part of this partnership," I said, voice steady, "we will collaborate with the Extension Office and Midwestern State University to create educational programs right here on these fields. We'll welcome visitors for farm-to-table dinners, workshops on regenerative farming, and seasonal events that celebrate our heritage." A ripple of applause spread through the room. I allowed myself a brief glance at Jacob, whose chest swelled with pride. Then the clerk opened the floor to questions. Mr. Thompson, the mayor, was first. "How will this impact local tax revenues and the school district's funding?" I answered, "The investors have agreed to maintain our current tax contributions, plus an additional endowment specifically earmarked for the school board to fund agricultural education initiatives." Next, Mrs. Delgado, who owned the feed store, asked, "Will our existing local contractors and suppliers still be employed?" "Absolutely," I replied. We insisted that all renovations and expansions be contracted through local businesses. We value our community's economy as much as our land. Questions came swiftly. Water table monitoring, pesticide use, event scheduling, and everything in between. For each, Jacob and I provided clear, honest answers. When doubt flickered in someone's eyes, I offered the personal story behind the clause. How my grandfather had taught me the importance of clean water. How students had thrived in our first pilot workshop. By the end, the clerk thanked us, and one by one, neighbors came forward to shake our hands. Many offered words of gratitude and support. Some simply smiled, a gesture more powerful than any endorsement. As we stepped outside, the midday sun warmed my skin. I exhaled, letting the tension dissolve. Jacob wrapped his arm around me, and together we watched the church doors swing closed behind the last of the onlookers. "Did we do it?" I asked, voice hushed. He nodded, his eyes shining. "You spoke from the heart. They heard you." I took a deep breath of the summer air, tasting earth and possibility. This was more than an administrative formality. It was a covenant between our past and future. Walking back toward the fields, I felt a profound sense of purpose. We had not only secured our farm's future, but we had woven our community's dreams into every clause. Later that evening, as fireflies rose from the meadow and our neighbors gathered at the farmhouse for an impromptu celebration, I raised a glass of homemade cider. To Cedar County, I toasted, voice ringing with emotion. To our past, our present, and the bright future we'll build together. Subscribe if you believe in community, because this story is far from over. I smiled, letting the moment linger. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now back to the story. The crisp morning air tingled with promise as I stepped outside, inhaling the scent of freshly turned earth. The granary guest house was nearly complete. Scaffolding removed, the last coat of whitewash drying under the sun. Today, final touches awaited, placing handmade quilts on the beds, arranging potted herbs in windowsills, and setting out mason jars filled with fresh daisies on every nightstand. Jacob met me at the gate, grinning. "You ready to host your first visitors?" I laughed, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "As ready as I'll ever be. Let's make some memories." By midday, our inaugural guests arrived, a family of 4 from Chicago, eager for a weekend escape. The parents, Claire and Marcus Thompson, beamed as they stepped onto the porch, their 2 children racing toward the hay bales for an impromptu game of tag. "Welcome to Callahan Farm," I greeted them warmly, extending my hand. "I'm Lauren, and this is my husband Jacob. We're thrilled to have you." Claire's eyes sparkled. "We've been dreaming of a farm stay. The kids are going to love it." Jacob showed them to the guest house, explaining the local flora and giving a brief overview of the weekend's activities, a guided tour of the research plots, a cooking class using fresh vegetables, and a bonfire under the stars. As I tucked the kids into the bunk beds, their laughter echoing off the wooden walls, I felt a surge of fulfillment. This was the heartbeat of agritourism, bridging the gap between urban lives and rural rhythms. That afternoon, I led the Thompsons through the fields, sharing the story of our partnership with Midwestern State University. The children poked at soil samples with tiny trowels, while Claire listened intently to Dr. Patel's explanation of soil health. "It's like magic," the younger child whispered, eyes wide as he held a handful of rich, dark soil. I smiled. "In a way it is. Every seed we plant is a promise." Back at the barn, I taught the parents how to butter churn and bake biscuits in the wood-fired oven. Marcus, a software engineer, confessed he never knew farming involved so much science. "It's an ecosystem," I said, kneading dough. "Everything connects. Soil, water, plants, animals, and humans. Understanding one means respecting all." They nodded thoughtfully, their appreciation deepening with each new skill. As dusk settled, we gathered around the bonfire. The Thompsons toasted marshmallows while Jacob strummed his guitar, filling the night with gentle melodies. I gazed at the stars, feeling the warmth of the flames and the joy of community. Claire leaned toward me. "Thank you, Lauren. This has been life-changing." "It's our pleasure," I replied softly. "It's why we do what we do." Jacob nudged me, whispering, "Look up." I lifted my eyes to the sky, where a meteor shower lit streaks across the velvety black. Gasps rose from the group. "Make a wish," I whispered. In that silent, shared moment, I realized our story was not just about land or legacy. It was about connection, wonder, and the universality of dreams. As the night deepened, I tucked the children into their cozy beds in the granary, each quilt whispering tales of the past. Standing at the doorway, I whispered to myself, "This is just the beginning." Outside, the barn's lantern cast a soft glow on the fields, guiding us forward into the next chapter of our journey. The golden light of dawn seeped into the east field as I rose before the sun, anticipation humming in my veins. Today marked the launch of our first Harvest Festival, an event months in the planning, bringing together neighbors, agricultural enthusiasts, university researchers, and visitors from nearby cities. The smell of fresh pastries, baking in the farmhouse kitchen, mingled with the earthy scent of cured wood, creating a symphony of home and tradition. I adjusted the bunting along the weathered fence posts, tying ribbons of harvest orange and deep burgundy, as Jacob loaded the last crates of heirloom vegetables onto wooden stands. The granary guesthouse glowed behind us, transformed into a warm hearth of hospitality. As the festival gates opened, a steady stream of guests flowed in. Families chasing children through mazes, artisanal vendors arranging jams and handcrafted candles on picnic tables, and local musicians tuning their fiddles atop the barn stage. I took a deep breath, my heart swelling with pride. This was what I had fought for, a celebration of community and earth, where stories rooted in family history and modern innovation intertwined. By late morning, I found myself on the barn stage, microphone in hand, ready to deliver the festival welcome. I looked out at a sea of smiling faces, a tapestry of anticipation beneath the open sky. "Welcome, friends, to the inaugural Callahan Farm Harvest Festival," I called, my voice echoing through the fields. Today, we celebrate the culmination of hard work, the bounty of the earth, and the bonds that unite us. Together, we will learn, share, and revel in the joy of harvest. Applause erupted as fiddles began to play in the background. I smiled, stepping down to mingle with guests, answering questions about crop rotations, demonstrating pumpkin carving techniques, and sampling homemade cider alongside neighbors. Meanwhile, Jacob led a workshop on grazing techniques, teaching participants how rotational patterns enriched pastures and improved herd health. Nearby, university students from the Sustainable Agriculture program presented posters on soil microbiomes, attracting crowds eager to understand the science driving our success. I watched as Mrs. Delgado inspected an experimental variety of squash, her eyes alight with curiosity. "Who would have thought shredding plastics and forging partnerships could produce results like this?" she remarked, sampling a slice. I laughed. "It's more than farming, it's stewardship." As the sun dipped low, string lights twinkled overhead, and the aroma of barbecue drifted across the grounds. Musicians played, couples danced, children chased fireflies. The festival had become a living testament to resilience and cooperation. I stole a quiet moment beside the creek, dipping my fingers into the cool water. The current whispered a lullaby of continuity, reminding me that time flowed onward but always carried memories within its currents. As night deepened, lantern-lit tables lined the barn, where guests enjoyed a farm-to-table feast. I moved through the crowd, greeting friends old and new, hearing stories of how the festival had inspired them to pursue their own dreams of sustainable living. Jacob found me by the bonfire pit, his arm around my waist. "You've created something extraordinary," he said, voice soft amid the crackle of burning wood. I rested my head on his shoulder, gazing at the flames. "We've created something extraordinary," I corrected, "together." He kissed my forehead, and I closed my eyes, letting the warmth sink into my bones. Later, under a canopy of stars, guests released paper lanterns into the night sky, each carrying written hopes for next year's harvest. I watched one drift aloft, its fragile flame bobbing against the moon. A hush fell as the crowd looked upward, unified by wonder. I felt tears prick my eyes, not of sadness, but of profound gratitude. This land, this community, this story. It was more than I had imagined possible when the Hawthorns first arrived at our door. As the final lantern flickered beyond sight, I whispered into the night, "This is only the beginning." Morning light filtered through the curtains of our granary guest house as I awakened to the distant crow of a rooster. The harvest festival had come and gone, leaving behind memories of laughter, music, and the communal forging of dreams. But for Jacob and me, there was no rest. Only the steady pulse of progress driving us forward. After a simple breakfast of farm-fresh eggs and homemade bread, I met with Elise and Samuel in the barn-turned office, whiteboards covered in charts and plans. Our upcoming obligations include the first scholarship awards ceremony and the launch of the mobile education unit, Elise began, adjusting her glasses. And we need to finalize the branding for the farm-to-table product line. Samuel nodded. We'd also like to discuss expanding to regional farmers markets, leveraging the buzz from the festival. I smiled, energized by the tasks ahead. Let's start with the scholarships. We need to draft invitations, select our first recipients, students who show passion for sustainable agriculture, and plan the ceremony to coincide with next month's county fair. Jacob added, and the mobile unit needs outfitting, lab equipment for soil testing, seating for workshops, and branding that reflects our partnership's vision. Hours later, I found myself in the cool shade of the oak tree with a stack of applications from local high school seniors. Each essay brimmed with hope and ambition, students eager to learn, to innovate, and to serve their communities. I felt the weight of responsibility as I selected the first scholarship recipient, envisioning the future they would shape. Meanwhile, Jacob coordinated with the county fair organizers, securing the barn annex for our ceremony and arranging a farm stand featuring our research products. That afternoon, the mobile education unit pulled into the driveway, an old school bus transformed into a gleaming beacon of learning. Inside, benches faced a fold-out lab bench, and diagrams of crop rotations and water management lined the walls. I ran my hand along the bus's exterior, where our logo, an interlocking wreath of corn stalks and wheat sheaves, gleamed under the sun. We had come a long way from a simple farmhouse, yet every step affirmed our roots. The county fair buzzed with activity, carnival rides, livestock shows, and the hum of regional politics. Under the annex white tent, I arranged chairs and set out certificates, each embossed with the Callahan Scholarship seal. The first recipient, a shy girl named Lila Armstrong, stepped forward. Her essay spoke of her grandmother's garden and her dreams of agronomy research. As I handed her the scholarship check and a scholarship plaque, I saw tears of joy glisten in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "This means everything." I squeezed her hand. "This is just the beginning. Use it well." Evening drew near, and I welcomed guests to our newly christened farm-to-table stand, where jars of pickles, honey, and preserves beckoned. Sampling tables showcased heirloom grains and experimental crops from the research plots. Visitors marveled at the unique flavors, snapping photos for social media. Jacob joined me, offering a hearty handshake to the regional market coordinator who praised our innovative approach. "These products will fly off shelves," he predicted. I nodded, filled with pride. Our farm's journey continues to grow. Later, as I stood under the oak tree where Jacob and I first solidified our plan, I allowed myself a moment of reflection. The barn lights glowed like fireflies in the dusk, and the fields lay quiet, their secrets buried beneath the soil. I thought of all we'd accomplished, preserving our legacy, enriching our community, and pioneering sustainable practices that would ripple far beyond these fields. But even as I celebrated, I felt a familiar flutter, a reminder that every ending births a new beginning. Our story was still unfolding, promising more challenges, triumphs, and moments of wonder. I closed my eyes, listening to the cicadas' serenade, and whispered. The first light of dawn filtered through the mist that rose from the creek, painting the fields in soft pastel hues. Today marked the beginning of the next season's planting, and with it, a new wave of opportunity and challenge for Callahan Farm. As I stepped onto the porch, cup of coffee warming my hands, I reflected on the whirlwind of events that had transformed our lives over the past months. From the arrival of the investors to the Harvest Festival, the scholarship ceremony, and the mobile education unit, Each milestone had woven new threads into the tapestry of our legacy. But as any farmer knows, the cycle of growth and renewal never pauses. The work ahead demanded our full attention. I found Jacob in the barnyard, inspecting the seed drill as the sun peeked over the horizon. Its steel wheels glinted, and the wooden hoppers held the first load of heirloom wheat we'd sourced from a partner cooperative. We'd decided to dedicate a quarter of our acreage to specialty grains, showcasing traditional varieties that offered both flavor and resilience. "Morning," I greeted him softly, setting my coffee on the tool bench. "Ready to sow?" He looked up, his eyes crinkling with a smile. "Always. Let's give these seeds the best start possible." We climbed onto the tractor together, my heart pounding with anticipation. As Jacob guided the machine over the earth, drop by rhythmic drop, each kernel settled into the soil, a promise of abundance to come. Later that day, I met with the university research team to evaluate the winter cover crop trials. Dr. Patel handed me a clipboard full of data. "Your radish and clover mix improved infiltration rates by 22%, and the ryegrass showed exceptional nitrogen fixation. We're on track to publish a case study this quarter," she reported. "Fantastic," I said, tracing the figures. "Let's prepare the presentation for the International Sustainable Ag Summit. Jacob and I will co-present again, and maybe we can lead a workshop on community partnerships." Her smile reflected shared excitement. "They'll love hearing how you integrated local scholarships and agritourism into the research narrative." Quote, "Afternoons on the farm turned into a flurry of activity, visiting local markets to promote the new grain line, coordinating with the mobile unit team to schedule school visits, and overseeing the granary guesthouse as it welcomed fall harvest guests. One afternoon, I received a call from Monica. She wanted to visit and see the changes firsthand. Memories of her earlier mockery surfaced, but I welcomed her reconnection. Family, after all, was part of our farm's story. When she arrived, Monica stepped onto the property with cautious awe. The fields glowed with golden wheat ready for harvest, and the farmhouse stood resolute, its new porch lights illuminating the pathway. "Lauren," she said softly, hugging me, "this place, it's incredible. I didn't realize." I smiled, tears pricking my eyes. "Come see it all. Let me show you how far we've come together." That evening, we gathered around the big oak table in the barn, joined by research assistants, community leaders, and visiting farmers. The table groaned under platters of roasted vegetables, fresh bread, and jars of honey from our apiary pilot project. I raised my glass. To new seasons, new faces, and new dreams. Thank you all for being part of this journey. Glasses clinked, and laughter echoed off the beams. The candlelight flickered on Monica's awestruck face, and I realized that our farm had reclaimed more than just land. It had rekindled bonds and built bridges. That night, as I lay in bed, I penned entry after entry in my journal, capturing insights, ideas, and hopes for the coming year. The pages filled with plans for expanded research plots, additional scholarship categories, and new agritourism packages aligned with seasonal cycles, everything from spring wildflower walks to winter bonfires. Outside my window, the soft glow of the moon lay over the fields. I whispered into the night, "We've only just begun. The next harvest will tell a new tale, and I can't wait to write it." The horizon glowed with the first hints of dawn as I stepped into the fields, clutching a sturdy basket woven from willow branches. The wheat we'd sown months ago stood tall and golden, its heads heavy with ripeness. Today, we would harvest the heirloom grain varietal we'd dedicated to the specialty program, the one that promised not only exceptional flavor, but also a testament to resilience and tradition. Jacob joined me at the field's edge, his work gloves dusted with soil. He nodded, the sun catching the silver in his hair. "Ready, Lauren?" I smiled, my breath catching at the beauty before us. "More than ever, let's bring in the harvest." We moved in tandem, handheld sickles gleaming against the morning light. Each stalk we cut, we laid carefully into the basket, whispering silent gratitude to the earth that had nurtured them. The rhythm was almost meditative. Cut, gather, bind, until the basket brimmed at the top. We exchanged glances, exhilaration, and relief mingling in our eyes. "That first basket always feels like the start of something new," Jacob said. I nodded, setting the basket down. and by this afternoon, these grains will transform into flour that tells our story. Back in the barn, the milling machine whirred to life. The mechanical teeth, recently restored by our local blacksmith, ground the kernels into fine flour, each grain passing from rustic history into modern innovation. We watched the white powder accumulate in burlap sacks, the aroma nutty and wholesome. Dr. Patel and her graduate students observed, taking samples for nutritional analysis. Their data would inform the forthcoming product labels, protein content, fiber percentages, antioxidant levels. Science and tradition converged in these moments, shaping a product that would stand out in regional markets. By midday, we hosted a milling demonstration for local bakers and artisanal food producers. The barn's doors threw back to reveal tables lined with fresh loaf samples, pasta made from our wheat, and crisp crackers drizzled with local olive oil. Mrs. Delgado bit into a warm roll, her eyes widening in surprise. "I've never tasted bread like this. It's alive." I laughed, pride blossoming in my chest. "It's the heritage variety, hand-selected for flavor and hardiness." Across the table, food bloggers snapped photos for their social feeds, their comments streaming with praise and promises to promote our products far beyond Cedar County. That evening, we held a launch party in the Granary Guesthouse, inviting scholarship recipients, university partners, investors, and longtime residents. String lights cast a warm glow over repurposed hay bale seating, and the scent of fresh-baked goods mingled with the autumn air. Jacob raised a toast. "To the first harvest of our heirloom wheat. May it nourish bodies, inspire minds, and honor the legacy of this land." Quote, "Glasses clinked, and I felt the energy of everyone present, an intergenerational chorus united by soil and purpose." Later, as guests danced to the fiddle's tune, I slipped outside to stand under the ancient oak. The stars shone overhead, and the cool breeze carried the laughter from within. Monica found me, her eyes reflecting moonlight. "It's incredible what you've done," she said softly. I slipped an arm around her. "I'm glad you're here to see it." She nodded. "I have a proposition. Mind if I share it?" I raised an eyebrow. "Go on." Monica took a deep breath. "I've been talking to a friend in the publishing business. I think your story could be a book. Memoir meets agrarian manifesto. It would reach a wider audience and bring more attention to sustainable farming." I felt tears prick my eyes. "I never thought of that." She smiled. "You should." Under the oak's canopy, I realized our story had transcended the fields. It was now ready to cross oceans, break into city lights, and inspire hearts far beyond this farm. Tomorrow, we would begin drafting the proposal. But tonight, I simply breathed in the night and whispered. My mind buzzed with excitement as morning light filtered through the granary's small window. The ink from Monica's publishing proposal was still fresh in my thoughts. Could our farm's story truly resonate beyond these fields and barns? I brewed a pot of strong coffee and settled at the reclaimed wooden desk in the loft. Notebooks spread around me like a flock of expectant birds. Jacob emerged from the barnyard, wiping his hands on a rag, curiosity lighting his eyes. "You look deep in thought." I smiled, the thrill of possibility threading through my voice. "Monica's idea, a memoir, a manifesto that weaves our agricultural journey with community empowerment." He set down a mug for me. "You should do it. Your voice, our story, deserves to be heard." I sipped my coffee, letting its warmth ground me. Writing had been my private sanctuary, a place to untangle dreams and fears. But this venture felt different. Public, vulnerable, transformative. "First step," I said, sketching an outline, "is to craft a proposal. A pitch that captures the emotional core of our journey, the heritage of the land, the fight for sustainability, and the bonds we forged." Jacob nodded. "Let me handle the financial projections. Show publishers that this story not only moves hearts, but also meets the growing market for sustainable memoirs." Quote, I reached for my journal. "Agreed. I'll draft the narrative arc and sample chapters. Let's aim to present the proposal to Monica by week's end." Over the next days, the granary loft became our makeshift writer's studio. I rose before dawn to pen the first chapter, recounting how I first fell in love with farming, sitting on my grandfather's knee, feeling grain slip through our fingers. The words flowed in gentle waves, carrying memories of sunburned skin, the scent of fresh-turned earth, and my grandfather's soft-spoken wisdom. Meanwhile, Jacob compiled data, audience demographics for agrarian literature, sales figures of similar memoirs, social media engagement from our farm's channels. He created visually striking charts to illustrate the expanding market for immersive rural stories and environmental narratives. Monica arrived one afternoon, her leather portfolio in hand. We spread our materials across the desk, handwritten pages, printed projections, and a mood board of photos. Sunrise over cornfields, children's laughter in the barnyard, scholarship ceremonies, and festival crowds. "This is beautiful," she said, scanning my pages. "You framed it perfectly. It's not just your life story, it's a blueprint for community-driven change." I exhaled, relief and pride mingling. That's the heart of it. That evening, we sat around the oak table with Monica and Sarah Brewster, her friend in publishing. Armed with snacks from our granary kitchen, honey-glazed nuts, fresh cheeses, and heirloom crackers, we presented our proposal. Sarah leaned back, her pen tapping thoughtfully against her notebook. "The narrative is compelling," she began. "Publishers look for authenticity and unique perspectives. This farm-to-page approach, combining memoir and agricultural manifesto, could be a hit in both literary and environmental markets." She paused, then smiled. "Let's take this to 3 major houses in New York. I'll handle the agent introductions, and you'll want to polish the manuscript sample to 10,000 words." My heart raced. Yes, we'll have the sample ready in 2 weeks. With manuscript deadlines looming, I carved out writing sessions in between farm responsibilities. The rhythm was invigorating. Dawn in the fields, midday presentations, afternoon writing sprints in the loft, and evening edits by lantern light. I revisited scenes of community meetings, the county clerk's office standing vigil, the first shock of investor's offer, and the triumphant harvest festival under star showers. Each scene pulsed with emotional truth and practical detail: soil data charts, scholarship recipients' faces, the milling machine's hum. Jacob supported me by taking on more fieldwork, overseeing the new grain harvest, liaising with the research team, and managing guesthouse bookings. He even began drafting a foreword, reflecting on his own journey from solitary farmer to community leader. 2 weeks later, I handed Monica a polished sample manuscript. 10,000 words of narrative that captured both quiet reflection and climactic moments. The day the hawthorns first set wheels on our driveway, the county hall impassioned pleas, and the first crack of the milling machine transforming our harvest into flour. She read in silence, the creases of concentration on her brow. When she looked up, her eyes glistened. "This is extraordinary, Lauren. It's lyrical yet grounded, aspirational yet real. Agents will clamor for it." I exhaled, a mix of nerves and excitement. We sealed the pages in a crisp folder, ready to launch our story into the world. That night, I walked the fields under a velvet sky. Fireflies danced among the corn, and the silo cast a tall shadow on the moonlit soil. With every step, I felt the weight of possibility. The farm's story crossing oceans, lighting minds in distant cities, inspiring new generations to plant seeds of change. I raised my face to the stars, feeling the cool breeze carry my whispered promise. Our story is just beginning. As I turned to head back, I noticed a faint light in the distance, coming from the old farmhouse porch, where a lone figure stood watching the fields. The silhouette seemed familiar yet uncertain. I strained to see who it was. Dawn crept over the horizon, golden light seeping through the farmhouse windows as I stirred from sleep. But something felt off, an unfamiliar heaviness in the air. I slipped into my boots and tiptoed down the hallway, pausing at the threshold of the living room. There, standing beneath the soft glow of the porch light, was my sister Monica. Her silhouette was framed by the open doorway, rain-soaked hair clinging to her face as she stared at the fields with a strange intensity. My heart tightened. "Monica, what are you doing here so early?" She turned, her eyes red-rimmed. She didn't smile. Instead, she offered me a small, shaky nod. I'm sorry, Lauren, I needed to see it again, close up. I crossed the room, concern etched on my face. What's wrong? You seemed so excited when you left last week. Her gaze dropped to the floor. I've been thinking about the book proposal, about everything you've accomplished. I realize how precious this place is, and how much I missed by mocking you. My throat tightened. Monica. Tears welled in her eyes. I came to apologize and to ask for a chance to be part of this. I want to help, not as a rider on your coattails, but as a partner. Emotion surged in my chest. Relief, anguish, hope. I crossed the room and pulled her into an embrace. You are always part of this, Monica. Over coffee, she confessed that witnessing our story's impact had transformed her perspective. I talked to Sarah Brewster, she said. She mentioned there's a media company that wants to produce a documentary series. They're looking for authentic stories of rural innovation. My pulse quickened. A documentary? That could bring our message to millions. Monica nodded. But they want someone on the ground, someone dedicated to production. I thought, maybe I could help manage it, coordinate interviews, handle logistics. I want to show that this isn't just your story, it's ours. Jacob joined us at the table, exchanging surprised glances. What do you think, Lauren? I took a moment, considering. The documentary could amplify our impact, educating viewers about sustainable farming, community empowerment, and the power of dreaming big. Yet it would also beckon the world to our doorstep, disrupting our quiet rhythms. It would be a challenge, I admitted, tracing the rim of my mug. But if anyone can make it work, it's you, Monica. Her eyes shone. Then let's do it together. By midday, we were on the phone with the media company's producer, sketching out an initial season plan, 6 half-hour episodes chronicling our journey, from the first appraisal to the latest documentary pitch. They wanted behind-the-scenes access, scholarship ceremonies, festival planning, harvesting, the writing process, even the moments of doubt. Elise listened in, her expression thoughtful. This aligns beautifully with our mission. We can provide data and resources for the series too. Samuel added, the investment portfolio will look impressive when accompanied by a documentary narrative. Quote, I realized we were stepping into a new spotlight, one that could educate the world and secure our legacy in multimedia formats. We'll need consent forms, release agreements, and scheduling calendars. Monica, can you manage that? I asked. She nodded energetically. I'll draft everything today. We'll be production ready by next week. As afternoon light filtered through the barn windows, I organized the research notes for the first episode's storyline, focusing on the day we resisted selling until our terms were met. The script had to balance emotional storytelling with factual integrity. Jacob and I rehearsed interview responses, anticipating questions about community impact, sustainable practices, and future visions. We wanted the series to inspire viewers, not just showcase our success, but invite them into their own gardens of possibility. That evening, as the crew set up lights and cameras under the oak tree, I felt a familiar flutter of nerves. But this time, I welcomed it. It was the pulse of an evolving story, ever expanding beyond these fields. Monica stood beside me, her camera operator adjusting the lens. I caught her eye and smiled. Ready to tell our story to the world? She whispered. I took a deep breath, the scent of earth and wood enveloping me. Ready. And as the cameras rolled under the twilight sky, I knew our farm's legacy would grow roots far beyond Iowa, into hearts, minds, and screens around the globe. Tomorrow, the world would see the Callahan farm through our eyes. The farmhouse was still warm from the day's filming when I finally retreated to my writing nook in the loft. The hum of cameras and crew had faded, leaving only the whisper of the wind through the open window and the distant croak of barn owls settling in for the night. I stared at the blank page of my laptop, the blinking cursor, a gentle reminder that our story was expanding, now in words, in film, in hearts across continents. But before I could write, I needed to reflect. The last few months had been a whirlwind. Appraisals and negotiations, community gatherings and scholarship ceremonies, harvests and festivals, book proposals and documentary shoots. Each milestone had deepened my understanding of what stewardship truly meant. It was more than ownership. It was guardianship, an ever-evolving commitment to land, people, and purpose. I pressed my hand to my heart, feeling the steady drumbeat of determination. Tomorrow, our crew would arrive at dawn to film the soil trials at first light, capturing that magical moment when dew refracts the sun in tiny prisms. But tonight, I would ground myself in memory. Morning's first light revealed a sky painted in pastels as the cameras rolled across the fields. I guided the cinematographer to the research plots, where Dr. Patel and her students prepared samples of the latest cover crop rotation. Each shot was deliberate, hands sifting soil, roots weaving through the earth, the contrast between barren winter ground and vibrant summer growth. The director called cut, and I gathered the team beneath the oak tree, sharing the scientific context that grounded these visuals. These trials are more than data points. They're the evidence that healing the land is possible, through collaboration, experimentation, and respect for natural processes. By mid-morning, we moved to the Granary Guest House, where the morning's guests, a group of agricultural extension officers, awaited tours. The cameras captured their reactions as they sipped herbal teas grown right outside the door and marveled at the repurposed architecture. I led them through each room, noting the insulation made from recycled wool, the solar panels hidden on the roof, and the rainwater collection barrels built into the eaves. It was a living example of sustainable design, a microcosm of our broader farm philosophy. The afternoon brought an impromptu interview beneath the silo, the golden stalks of wheat swaying behind me. The reporter asked, "Lauren, what drives you? Why push yourself beyond the fields, into boardrooms, publishing, and film?" I paused, looking across the expanse of land that had shaped me. I believe that our soils hold stories, not just of nutrients and yields, but of community, history, and collective hope. If I can share these stories through books and screen, maybe others will realize the power they hold in their own backyards. Evening approached with a golden haze as we captured the final sunset shot, the cameras rolling in reverse so the sun rose back into the sky. It was surreal, like painting with light and time, reminding me that storytelling bends reality in beautiful ways. After the crew packed away their gear, I walked with Jacob to the creek, its water shimmering like melted silver. We sat on a mossy log, listening to the soft current. "This season has changed me," I confessed. "I'm not just a farmer or a storyteller. I'm a bridge between urban and rural, past and future, science and soul." He wrapped an arm around me. "And you've given life to that bridge." A soft chorus of birdsong greeted me at dawn as I stepped onto the farmhouse porch, the world washed in the pastel glow of early morning. 15 chapters in, and our journey still felt like a living tapestry, each thread adding depth, texture, and color to the story of Callahan Farm. Today was special, the launch of our online education platform, Grow Together, designed to share tutorials, farm tour videos, and interactive modules with a global audience. It was the culmination of months of planning, research, and creative collaboration. As I inhaled the crisp air, I felt a surge of anticipation. Jacob joined me, coffee mug in hand. "You look ready to conquer the world." I laughed softly. "One video at a time. Let's do this." Inside the barn, technicians set up cameras and lighting for the platform's promotional launch video. We had chosen a rustic corner, where beams of sunlight filtered through slats, to create warmth and authenticity. I reviewed my script, an introduction to the platform's ethos, bringing the joys and realities of sustainable farming to anyone with a screen and a desire to learn. The director counted down, and I spoke, "Welcome to Grow Together, where every video, lesson, and worksheet is rooted in the soil of Callahan Farm." Whether you're a home gardener or an aspiring agronomist, you'll find tools and inspiration to cultivate your own patch of the world. Let's grow together. After the final take, the crew applauded, and I felt a swell of pride. This was more than content. It was a bridge between our fields and far-flung viewers, eager to sow seeds of change. By mid-morning, I had a video call with the publishing house's acquisitions editor, discussing marketing strategies for the memoir's upcoming release. Together, we brainstormed virtual book tours, audiobook narrators, and partnerships with environmental nonprofits to tie back to our scholarship fund. The editor's voice crackled with excitement. Your story's authenticity and multimedia presence, blog posts, documentary webinars, will make it a standout. We'll publish in 6 months. I pinched the bridge of my nose, overwhelmed with relief and exhilaration. Thank you. 6 months it is. Quote, that afternoon, I recorded a webinar for Grow Together's beta testers, a live cover crop selection and soil microbiology. The chat box filled with questions, and I answered each, weaving in anecdotes from our farm's trials. The chat feed scrolled rapidly, a wave of engagement that made my heart race. Jacob peeked in, his face alight with pride. Looks like you've got a crowd. More than I ever imagined, I replied, smiling as I typed a concluding note. Thank you for growing with us. Stay curious, stay connected, and keep your hands in the soil. Evening found me back in the granary loft, reviewing footage from the documentary's first episode. Scenes of soil trials darted past, followed by interviews with scholarship recipients on the county fair stage. The narrative was shaping beautifully, but I sensed it needed a personal touch, more of my voice reflecting on the emotional journey. I grabbed my journal and scribbled reflections, memories of fear when the investors first appeared, of triumphant laughter under the harvest moon, and of the tremor in my hands as I signed the sale agreement that saved our legacy. These raw moments would anchor the documentary's arc, reminding viewers that real change comes with vulnerability and courage. Late that night, I wandered the fields with Jacob, the moon casting silver veins across the land. We paused at the edge of the demonstration plot, where seedlings peeked through dark soil. Do you ever think about how many lives we've touched? I asked. He nodded, eyes reflecting starlight. Each person who learns, each community that benefits through the scholarship, each viewer who finds hope, our impact ripples outward. I leaned against him, breathing in the night stillness. The platform launch, the book's publication, the documentary premiere, all loomed on the horizon, promising waves of attention and possibility. Suddenly, my phone buzzed with a notification, an email from the publisher's marketing team. Subject line, advance praise needed. My heart skipped. Advance praise, quotes from reviewers, celebrities, or influencers, would be essential for the hardcover dust jacket. They needed it by tomorrow. I looked at Jacob, urgency crackling between us. I need endorsements, fast. We have to reach out to sustainable leaders, writers, maybe even our documentary contacts. He smiled, though his eyes held concern. We'll make the calls, together. Quote, under the silver sky, I realized our journey had purely begun, and the next day would set a new tempo, one measured in mailed letters, phone calls, and hearts won. And so, as the crickets heralded midnight's approach, I whispered into the hush. Morning light filtered through the curtains as I sat at my desk, a steaming mug of coffee cradled between my hands. Today was the day. A marathon of outreach calls, emails, and social media messages to secure advance praise for my upcoming memoir. My heart pounded with both excitement and nerves. This was a new frontier of vulnerability. Jacob appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Ready to conquer the world? I chuckled, steadying my voice. I've got a list a mile long. Let's see which voices we can lift our story with. By mid-morning, my laptop was open to a draft email addressed to our friend Dr. Maya Emerson, a best-selling author and environmental advocate who had once spoken at our Harvest Festival. Her endorsement could lend credibility and reach beyond agricultural circles. I typed swiftly, Dear Dr. Emerson, I hope this finds you well. I'm reaching out with a special request. Would you consider reading an advance copy of my memoir, Fields of Promise, and providing a brief quote for the dust jacket? Our farm's work in sustainable agriculture and community empowerment has grown into a narrative that I believe aligns with your mission of environmental stewardship. I paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard, wondering if the ask was too bold. Then, recalling Maya's warm embrace at the festival, I clicked send. Next, I drafted a message to Samuel Hawthorne and Elise Grant, the investors who'd catalyzed our transformation. Their unique perspective, as unlikely allies turned genuine partners, could offer a compelling angle. Samuel Elise, your vision for our land has become part of this story's heartbeat. Would you be willing to share a line on how our partnership shaped your approach to sustainable investing? As noon approached, I stepped outside to gather my thoughts. The fields spread before me like a living manuscript. The golden stalks of late-season wheat whispered encouragement as the breeze danced through them. I turned my gaze toward the Granary Guest House, where an excited group of documentary producers had gathered the night before. Their earlier conversations had hinted at interest in providing quotes once the series aired. Another potential resource. Back at my desk, the inbox pinged with a response from Dr. Emerson. Lauren, congratulations. Your work is a testament to hope and action. I'd be honored to provide a quote. Please send the manuscript in PDF form by tomorrow morning. Best, Maya. Tears welled in my eyes. That quick turnaround was a blessing and a new deadline. The afternoon became a blur of document exports, PDF conversions, and file uploads to Google Drive. I organized everything meticulously, creating folders labeled Advance Praise Emerson, H&G Testimonials, and Documentary Quotes. Jacob helped, reviewing each file to ensure formatting consistency. Between tasks, I took phone calls with local journalists to schedule Q&A sessions around the memoir launch, ensuring the story would resonate not just in agrarian circles, but in mainstream media outlets. At dusk, I closed the laptop with a satisfied sigh. The machinery of publishing was complex, but with each completed task, the dream edged closer to reality. I poured 2 glasses of cider and met Jacob on the porch. We did good today, he said, clinking his glass against mine. I smiled, basking in the moment. On to the next challenge, interview prep for the documentary series. That night, under a canopy of stars, I drafted interview points, lessons learned from negotiating with investors, insights on community-driven agriculture, and reflections on the power of storytelling. The microphone would capture both triumphs and struggles, the raw honesty that turns stories into inspiration. The dawn chorus of meadowlarks filtered through the open window as I sat at the farmhouse desk, reviewing my interview notes for the documentary filming scheduled today. This was a pivotal moment. Our words captured on camera would distill years of toil, triumph, and transformation into narratives that might inspire viewers worldwide. Jacob's footsteps sounded as he entered, coffee in hand. He paused, seeing the stack of cue cards and the tension etched on my brow. Big day? He asked softly. I nodded, taking a sip of coffee. I want to nail these interviews. The documentary team is focused on authenticity. They want my genuine reflections on pivotal moments. He leaned against the doorframe. You've faced public speaking in barns, webinars, conferences. This will be no different. Just speak from the heart. Under the oak tree where our story had unfolded, the camera crew assembled, setting up prime lenses and softboxes to catch the morning light. The director signaled me, and I took position, the field stretching endlessly behind me, a living backdrop of possibility. Whenever you're ready, Lauren, the director said through her headset. I inhaled deeply, letting the earth breathe into my lungs. I'm ready. Lauren, the cameraman called softly, take it from the top. Tell us about the day the investors first arrived and how it changed everything. I closed my eyes, recalling that moment vividly, the black SUVs glinting under the sun, the folders of appraisals, and the uncertainty that had seized my chest. When I spoke, my voice was steady, but beneath it a tremor of remembrance lingered. I remember watching those cars pull in, my heart racing. I wondered if we were making a mistake by even entertaining their offer. But Jacob squeezed my hand, and I realized, opportunity often comes cloaked in fear. That day taught me that protecting our dreams means sometimes confronting the unknown head-on. The crew shifted to capture B-roll of me walking through the research plots, touching the cover crop leaves, and kneeling to examine soil consistency. Dr. Patel explained measurements off-camera, her voice narrating scientific context. I watched through the lens as the camera transformed mundane moments, trowel scraping soil, roots winding through earth, into cinematic poetry. The farm itself was a protagonist. Next, the director asked for footage of my teaching moments. I guided a group of schoolchildren through the granary, showing them how to plant seeds and measure pH levels. Their wide-eyed curiosity translated powerfully on camera, their laughter echoing like promise. "What's your favorite part of farming?" a child off camera asked. I knelt down, meeting their gaze. "My favorite part is when I see a seed I planted grow into something that nourishes someone else, whether it's a loaf of bread, a scholarship fund, or a shared moment around a bonfire. That's the magic of farming. It feeds bodies and spirits alike." By midday, we moved into the barn for an interview focusing on the book journey. The microphone captured my voice echoing against wooden rafters. "Writing the memoir was a revelation," I told them. "I realized that our story was more than a personal memory. It was a roadmap for others who dream of reviving forgotten lands, empowering communities, and turning adversity into opportunity." Jacob watched from behind the camera, nodding proudly. I could feel his steadfast support behind every word. After a break for lunch, the producer asked for candid reflections on challenges, moments when I doubted myself. I spoke of the sleepless nights before the county hall meeting, of the fear that our counter-proposal might be dismissed, and of the weight of balancing farm labor with writing deadlines. "There were times I wondered if I was chasing a fantasy," I admitted, eyes glistening. "But every time I looked at Jacob, at our fields, or at the faces of community members, I knew the work was bigger than me. It was about legacy and possibility." The final shots of the day captured me standing at the creek, the water reflecting the afternoon sun. As I spoke of the future, Grow Together, the book release, the documentary release, I felt the weight of promise in my words. "Our journey is far from over," I concluded. "But sharing it has taught me that stories have roots, and roots can anchor hope in the most unexpected places." As the crew packed up, Jacob gave me a reassuring hug. "You were incredible," he whispered. I smiled, exhaustion and elation mingling in my bones. "We did it. Again." That night, reviewing the day's footage on my laptop, I realized a new chapter was already unfolding. The world would soon see our story, and with it, the seeds of change we'd sown. The hush before dawn carries a sacred quality, a moment where the world holds its breath before the first light ignites the horizon. I slipped out of the farmhouse in the pre-dawn chill, the sky a deep indigo, and made my way to the field's edge. Tonight's meteor shower had passed, but its embers still lingered in my mind. Trails of light burned across the sky, reminding me that every moment could be a spark of wonder. As the eastern sky began to pale, I stood with Jacob beneath a sky faintly brushed with lavender. He offered me a thermos of hot spiced cider, and we sipped in companionable silence. Today held weight. It was the day Fields of Promise would hit bookshelves, and the documentary's first episode streamed online. The world would finally peer into our story. "Ready?" Jacob asked, his voice hushed in reverence. I nodded, the cider warming my hands. "More than ever." In the farmhouse kitchen, the phone buzzed with notifications. Advance praise from Dr. Emerson displayed at the top, followed by messages from industry contacts, social media alerts, and emails confirming virtual book tour dates. My heart fluttered at each ping. "It's happening," I whispered, scanning the headlines. Lorena Callahan's Fields of Promise, Memoir of Hope and Harvest. Jacob leaned over my shoulder. "You did it. Our story is out there now." By mid-morning, I donned a crisp white blouse and sat at my desk for a live-streamed Q&A with a major literary blog. The camera framed me against the barn's rustic backdrop, combining authenticity with professionalism. The host asked, "What inspired you to write this memoir?" I paused, gathering my thoughts. It was the realization that our journey, messy, challenging, joyful, mirrored the cycles of the land. Just as seeds must face darkness to grow, our stories need vulnerability to resonate. I wanted others to see that farming isn't just a profession, it's a metaphor for life's resilience. Questions streamed in about preserving farmland, community empowerment, balancing tradition and innovation. Each answer felt like sowing seeds in fertile minds. At noon, I drove to the local bookstore for the memoir's launch event. The windows were adorned with posters of the cover, a golden field under a pastel sky, and a life-size cardboard cutout of me leaning on a fence. My palms sweated with anticipation as I stepped inside. Rows of chairs lined the aisles. and a small crowd of neighbors, scholars, and curious readers chattered in anticipation. The owner, Mr. Rossi, greeted me with a hug. "They're all here for you," he said, voice thick with pride. I took my seat on the author's chair, glancing at the sea of faces. Many wore smiles. Some held copies of the book close to their chests. When the time came, I rose and began reading an excerpt, the scene where I first confronted the investors under the oak tree, my voice trembling with fear and resolve. The room fell silent. Even the pages seemed to hang mid-turn. After I finished, applause erupted, filling the space with warmth. I answered questions on the memoir's structure, the entrepreneurial lessons woven into my narrative, and the emotional toll of revisiting painful memories. A young woman in the front row raised her hand. "Your farm is in Iowa. How do you think a personal story about a Midwestern farm resonates globally?" I considered. Because soil binds us all. Whether you garden in an apartment, manage a community garden, or oversee a vast plantation, we share the cycle of growth, decay, and renewal. My hope is that readers see echoes of their own lives in these fields. After the reading, I signed books one by one, inscribing personal notes. May this story inspire your own sowing of hope. Children shyly asked me to draw farm animals. Older readers shared tales of their family homesteads. Each interaction reaffirmed that our story had become their story too. Jacob arrived at the end, placing a bouquet of wild daisies on the signing table. "Look at this line," he said, pointing down the aisle. "People still waiting." I laughed, overwhelmed by gratitude. We've come so far. As dusk fell, I tuned in to the documentary's premiere online. The first episode began with the haunting scene of black SUVs rolling onto our property, intercut with voiceovers of my narration. The imagery of dew-laden crops, the gentle spin of the milling machine, the echo of soil sifting across hands. Each shot captured the soul of our farm. Comments streamed below. "Inspiring. I feel connected to this story. Can't wait for the next episode." Tears prickled my eyes as I watched glimpses of my face on screens around the world. Hearing my own words give voice to universal themes of resilience and community. When the credits rolled, I leaned back, breathing in the weight and wonder of what we'd achieved. Jacob sat beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "Part 19 is next," I said, a smile tugging at my lips. He kissed my temple, "and we'll face it together." As the screen darkened, I whispered into the hush of our living room, "Our journey has only just begun." The first light of morning filtered through the farmhouse windows, casting a pale glow on the scattered copies of my memoir stacked on the kitchen table. I moved among them like a conductor before an orchestra, each book a note in the grand symphony of our story. Jacob sipped his coffee, eyes half-lidded with curiosity. "What's the plan today?" he asked. I ran my fingers across the embossed cover, Fields of Promise. "Today, I want to focus on community engagement, organizing a live virtual discussion with local farmers and readers worldwide. We'll bridge the gap between rural wisdom and global audiences." Quote. He smiled. "I'll handle the technical setup. You gather questions and anecdotes." By mid-morning, our barn had been transformed into a virtual studio, laptop on a hay bale, ring lights illuminating my face, a backdrop of dried corn stalks and quilts. The chat window pulsed with names: farmers from Nebraska, urban gardeners in London, environmental students in Australia. I welcomed them warmly. Good morning and good evening to everyone joining from around the world. I'm Lauren Callahan, author of Fields of Promise, and this is my husband Jacob. Today, we're here to talk about the power of community and the lessons we can share across borders. Questions poured in. How do you handle crop failure without community support? What advice do you have for urban farmers with limited space? How can we advocate for policy changes to protect small farms? I answered each thoughtfully, weaving in stories of neighbors banding together after a hailstorm, of balcony gardeners who grew herbs, and of county commissioners who had championed farmland conservation measures. Jacob monitored the chat, highlighting key questions. His calm presence gave me confidence to delve into nuanced discussions. As the session wound down, a young woman from Ghana asked, "How can I implement sustainable farming techniques with limited resources?" I took a moment, searching for the right words. Begin with what you have: water collection, composting kitchen scraps, crop rotation with cover crops. Share knowledge with neighbors. Teach and learn in turn. Community-driven solutions are often the most sustainable because they adapt to local contexts. After the discussion, we reviewed the chat's insights, noting themes for future Grow Together modules: drought-resistant crops, urban agriculture hacks, and policy advocacy toolkits. Later, we ventured into the fields to capture B-roll for the next Grow Together episode: close-ups of seedlings pushing through soil, time-lapse footage of the milking parlor at dawn, and slow pans across our demonstration plots. The golden hour cast everything in a gentle glow, perfect for the message of resilience. As dusk approached, I walked to the creek with Jacob once again, reflecting on the non-linear rhythm of our journey. From the first appraisal to global virtual discussions, our story had transcended boundaries. Jacob broke the silence. Tomorrow is the last episode of the documentary, Part 20. We can't let it end without acknowledging the community that made this possible. I nodded. Let's honor them. Under the firefly-lit sky, I realized that our greatest accomplishment wasn't a book or a documentary. It was the web of connections woven across fields, screens, and hearts. The dawn chorus of sparrows wove through the fields as I stood at the edge of the western meadow, absorbing the clarity of morning light. Today marked the culmination of a journey that had begun with uncertainty and bloomed into something beyond my wildest dreams. We were filming the final episode of our documentary series, closing the circle of a saga rooted in soil and sustained by community. Jacob arrived beside me, camera bag slung over his shoulder. "Ready for the conclusion?" he asked softly, his eyes filled with pride. I inhaled deeply, the scent of dew-laden earth and fresh beginnings mingling in my senses. More than words can say. Together, we walked toward the ancient oak, the silent witness to our first negotiations, our vows to fight for the land, and our triumphs beneath its branches. The film crew gathered beneath the oak's sprawling limbs, microphones poised to capture the ambient hush of wind through leaves. I took my position on a weathered wooden bench where, years ago, I had first confided my hopes to Jacob. The camera's red light glowed and I began. This journey began with a single question: what is the true value of the land beneath our feet? Today, we answer that question not in dollars, but in stories. I paused, letting the weight of those words settle. Each chapter of Callahan Farm's story was written by countless hands: neighbors who stood by us, students who learned at our tables, and a community that believed in the power of possibility. We cut to footage of the Harvest Festival, families dancing, bands playing, children racing through corn mazes. The motorcade of black SUVs receded into memory, replaced by laughter that echoed across fields. Voiceovers from earlier episodes interwove: investors' reflections, scholarship recipients' gratitude, and my own narration on the magic of soil. As the scene shifted back to the oak, I continued. Our farm's legacy is not defined by acres or yields, but by the lives it has touched. From the smallest seed we planted to the pages of our memoir and the frames of our documentary, this story is a testament to what can grow when we nurture each other. The crew then filmed me, walking through the research plots, gently brushing leaves of cover crops. Dr. Patel's voice narrated the scientific breakthroughs, the soil organic matter improvements, the water retention metrics, the pilot programs that would influence farming practices worldwide. I knelt to examine a young shoot breaking through the earth. This single sprout is a metaphor for every new beginning, I said, eyes directed at the lens. Each of us holds the power to sow seeds of change, whether in our backyards, our communities, or our global networks. The camera panned to community volunteers, planting native wildflowers along the creek's edge, an image of solidarity between humans and nature. At midday, we filmed the final scholarship ceremony beneath a white tent at the county fairgrounds. Lila Armstrong, now a university freshman, spoke of her dreams fueled by the scholarship. Children deconstructed interactive agroscience kits from Grow Together, eyes shining with curiosity. I addressed the audience, This moment is not an end, but a beginning. As these young minds walk forward, they carry with them the lessons of this farm: resilience, stewardship, and the transformative power of community. The closing scene brought us back to the front porch of the farmhouse, where Jacob and I once stood at dawn, holding hands and vowing to protect our heritage. We sat together, the world awakening around us. When we first looked out at these fields, I saw soil and fences, I whispered, my voice soft but resonant. But now I see a tapestry woven from every person who has walked these paths. Our farm's story is their story. Wherever this tale finds new soil, may it take root and blossom into hope. Jacob leaned his head on my shoulder, and for a moment, the lens captured a quiet intimacy, a reminder that behind every grand narrative lies personal devotion. As the final take concluded, crew members clapped softly, and cameras powered down. The oak's leaves rustled in gentle applause from nature herself. I closed my eyes, breathing in the moment's completeness, a journey that had come full circle. Later, under the amber glow of barn lanterns, our community gathered for a wrap celebration. Neighbors, investors, researchers, students, and families whose lives had intertwined with ours. I raised a glass, feeling the collective heartbeat of everyone present. To all of you, I began, voice thick with emotion, this story belongs to each of us. We've proved that when we nurture land and each other, we cultivate more than crops. We cultivate a future of peace, purpose, and connection. Applause and tears mingled as I embraced friends and family. Monica stood nearby, her eyes shining with pride at the sister she once mocked, now the storyteller of a legacy reborn. As midnight approached, I found Jacob beside the silo, its silhouette dark against the star-strewn sky. He held me close, his breath warm against my ear. "We've given the world our story," he said. I nodded, tears slipping free. "And tomorrow, we'll plant new seeds, stories yet unwritten, fields yet to be dreamed. Remember, this is only one chapter in the tapestry of our lives." He kissed my forehead. "2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications." And as the gentle night held us, I knew that while this saga had reached its on-screen finale, the story of Lauren and Jacob, of Callahan Farm, and of every soul it touched would continue endlessly, written in every sunrise that bathed these fields, in every seed that broke the soil, and in the hearts of those who dared to dream beyond the horizon.